about to listen to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Dahlia Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Dahlia.
So a question parents have is, what do you do if you have a kid who has some real mental health issues? Well, I could tell you what to not do. Don't buy the kid a gun and let them have access to it. That's what a jury felt as it pertained to Colin Gray. Colin Gray is the father of Georgia school alleged shooter Colt Gray. And the father has now been found guilty of murder and manslaughter charges. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before convicting the dad on all 27 charges, 2 counts of second-degree murder, 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 18 counts of cruelty to children, and 5 counts of reckless conduct. Why? Because his son was bought an AR-15 style rifle as a Christmas present by the dad. And the son, Colt Gray, when he was 14 years old, allegedly used that same rifle to carry out a mass shooting at Appalachia High School in Winder, Georgia, on September 4th, 2024, killing 2 teachers and 2 students and wounding 9 others. Colin Gray is now facing the dad 10 to 30 years in prison on each murder charge and 1 to 10 years on each manslaughter charge. According to prosecutor Patricia Brooks, that man and his son are both responsible for the immense suffering that occurred on September 4th. Now, what did the defense say for the dad? Well, Colin Gray's defense said he didn't know about his son's violent plans and had taken steps to help him get help for his mental health troubles. The prosecution, I guess, was able to prove opposite. And so this isn't the first time now that we're seeing there's been this movement where parents are being found responsible. Remember James and Jennifer Crumbly, whose 15-year-old son killed 4 students in 2021 at his high school in Oxford, Michigan. Now, the son, Colt, did admit to the shooting. He's 16 years old now, but has pleaded not guilty to 55 felony counts, including 4 counts of malice murder. According to CNN, a trial date has not been set. But, apparently in this trial, you saw unsecured firearms and ammo in the bedroom closet. There was testimony from the teen's mother, grandmother, and sister about Colt's spiraling mental health. And I guess the defendant's estranged wife, Marcy Gray, had struggled with drug and alcohol addiction, testified that the son was riddled with anxiety, easily agitated, and panic attacks, and that it was very obvious he needed professional help, but her husband just didn't want to deal with it. And so there was body camera footage from May 21st to 2023 where I guess Jackson County Sheriff's Office visited the house of Colt and Colin Gray after receiving an FBI tip of an online threat to shoot up a school. Colt had denied posting. If you remember, we talked about this on air. He denied it. Law enforcement could not substantiate the tip. And then later that same year, the dad, Colin, bought his son an AR-15 style rifle. The defense only had one witness, the dad, Colin Gray. He testified he did buy his son the firearm and ammunition in an attempt to get him interested in the outdoors and for father-son bonding. He also said he had scheduled counseling at school for Colt's mental health issues and did not ever perceive his son as a threat. Well, this is a wake-up call to parents. Now, the father said he's a good kid. He wasn't perfect, nor was I, but to do something that heinous, I don't know that anybody can see that kind of evil. You're going to have to as a parent. All right, this love is blind and smoke gets in your eyes and all that other stuff. No. You are responsible for this kid. You are the only one that could save other people's lives. What do you do when you teach your kid how to drive? Right, you panic a little bit. You're like, my kid is now getting behind a wheel, the same one that liked to take his Tonka trucks, right, or his Matchbox cars or whatever, and just ran them into walls. This kid is now going to be behind a wheel. I better make sure this kid knows every single rule and doesn't hurt anybody. Same thing as it pertains to, firearms. I mean, what, the kid was 14? No, you don't buy the kid a gun. Listen, teaching your kids how to shoot, teaching your kids how to take care of a gun, teaching your kids how to do archery, how to fish, hunt. Okay, these are things that, yes, people do. But him having access to such a weapon when you know he's struggling, no, not good. And you have to understand, people say, yeah, but, he was like that maybe 6 months ago, but he's good now. They could relapse. But so parents are, they look at what happened to Rob Reiner and Michelle Reiner, where their son was obviously very troubled. They gave him a home. He was in, I think a guest house with them in their property. They took him with them to parties. They tried to keep him close. And it sounds like, he got some sort of mental health and he was on some sort of medication. But there are some individuals that, if they're not getting the proper treatment or they're not where they need to be, they could unfortunately become a danger to themselves and others. And if you're a parent, you're going to have to call it. All right. And I know it's really, really hard to say, well, look, they're my baby. I'm supposed to be the one to protect them and to stand up for them. No, you're supposed to be the one to not only protect them, but protect them from hurting themselves and others. Standing up for them and saying, I got your back. This world is crazy. We're best buds doesn't help them. And unfortunately, we're seeing this time and time again. Look at Adam Lanza. He kills his mom and then he goes to Sandy Hook Elementary and then shoots up the school. You have a child who has major issues. You have got to get it addressed, even if it means your relationship with that child is at risk. And if you really think they're going to come back and kill you, then you need to get authorities involved. But this was frightening. And yes, parents are going to start being found liable. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY.
Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Dahlia. As many of you know, I lost another colleague to suicide. And tragically, tens of thousands of Americans, including hundreds of physicians, take their lives each year. Why is suicide so common? Why doctors? Even medical students have alarming suicide rates. Nurse burnout is at an all-time high. Maybe it's the monstrous workloads we face every day. Maybe it's because of burnout, malpractice suits, online reviews. Medicine has changed so rapidly that it's almost unrecognizable to those of us who entered this field and wanted to take it by storm. But there's not a lot of resources out there for healthcare providers who deny that they are struggling or at risk. So my book, The Depressed Doctor, aims to change that for both the physician and medical student and anyone else who is struggling. Find The Depressed Doctor on Amazon or at drdahlia.com. And if you are currently struggling, call or text 988, the National Suicide Prevention and Crisis Hotline. Don't wait. The silence is killing us.
Let's face it, guys. We're living in times where the truth is becoming more suppressed and censorship is increasing at an alarming rate, especially on social media platforms. It's Clyde, and I want to tell you about a safe and secure digital playground we put together just for you. It's Aftermath.media. You get access to thousands of Ground Zero archives and podcasts, along with our private social media groups with your basic membership starting at only $7 a month. Each subscription includes tech support, access to the RSS feeds, along with our own chat room and Telegram channel. In addition, the premium membership includes research study groups, webinars, a document and movie library, a live video stream of Ground Zero, a monthly Zoom chat with me, and other bonus content. Be sure to check out our yearly specials as well. Sign up today while you're thinking about it. Sign up at Aftermath.media. Again, that's Aftermath.media.
right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to y'all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at X, or Twitter no longer, but it's X at Dr. Daliah, Facebook, The Dr. Daliah Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So this was an interesting reach out, with the AI and job loss and burnout and all that. I've mentioned multiple times. Apparently, we've had listeners that have been listening for years, and I'm really grateful to you guys for doing that. But one checked me and said, look, you're always bringing up writing a book. Write a book. You could write a book if you want. Write a book. How do you do that? How do you, if you've never written a book, write a book? So let me just teach you really quick how to. It's interesting how I don't know how old many of my listeners are. I know how old I am. I'm getting there. I'm middle age, but growing up in the 80s, if you were going to write a book, you had to be this, famous New York, best New York Times best-selling author, or you had to be famous and write an autobiography, that everybody really cared about and all that, and then you had to get a publisher and an editor, and then you had to get a literary agent, and you had to buy the books and put a lot of money out. And I was like, I could barely cross my T's and dot my I's, and I dangle my participles. There's no way I would write a book that, anybody would even want to read or be grammatically correct, because English was not, even though it's my first language, I don't have very good English. My mom did the best she could because my father, English was a second language. I'm like, no one's going to read my book. Same thing with recording a song. I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be a singer. And I wanted to create music, and I wanted to, be on the radio, be on Rick D's Weekly Top, right? Rick D's and Weekly Top 40, yeah, or Casey Kasem. I wanted to, and no, you had to get RCA Records, or you had to live in Tennessee or Nashville or Detroit. Not going to happen. So, I just kind of grew up going, you can't do it, you can't do it. Well, in this day and age, you could do anything you want. And there are people becoming famous. And I'm not saying do it to become famous, but if you're looking for other job opportunities, or to tap in on your artistic side, or to be an author, or to be a singer, or to be an entertainer, you now don't have to be, related to Nicolas Cage or related to the Kardashians. You don't have to have, a lot of money. You don't, there are ways to do it. And so the reason why I've become an author and I've published so many books is because Amazon makes it very easy. It's interesting. There's a lot of authors that don't say they did it through Amazon. They're like embarrassed. Don't be embarrassed. I did it through Amazon. That's why it's saving me money. And how that setup works is, as opposed to you going through all the expense of publishing it yourself and then buying boxes and boxes of books. And then when somebody wants to buy it, you need to have a website and sell it online and ship it. What Amazon does is they allow you to self-publish through their site. So you write your book, you edit it, copyright it, do whatever. You upload your cover, or they have covers. I'm not an artist. I can't draw. And so I'll use one of their covers. Some of them are some of them are cool. So then I'll use their cover. They'll help you format it with the title, things like that. You upload it, you publish it, and then they take a cut, which I'm fine with. Because again, I'm not usually doing my books to make money. I'm doing it because I want to teach. I want to get the word out there. But so rather than you buying a whole bunch of books and having them at your house and then having to deal with, if somebody wants to buy your book, they just go online, they buy it, Amazon ships it, and then they give you a small cut, whether it's 40%, 35%, whatever. You get to choose the pricing. You get to choose if it's distributed overseas. You get to choose if you want to do it also by Kindle and have it on an electric format. You just have to promise not to publish it with somebody else, I believe, which is fine by me, because I'm not going to spend the money to go and find another publisher and pitch it or whatever. You want my book, you go to Amazon, and that's where it is. But so that part is you don't have to spend a dime. Now, what to write a book on? You know, if you don't feel like you're an expert on anything, that doesn't matter. You have an opinion. You have experiences. You may have a story. You may have a very creative story. Yeah, I didn't realize that a lot of the bedtime stories I made up for the kids were pretty funny. Now, a lot of them had to deal with boogers and poo-poo and farts. But, let's say you have a really good bedtime story, all right? You could write a kid's bedtime story. Usually with kids' books, you're going to want to have some illustrations, but you could always, hire somebody to do some illustrations or, I don't know if you're allowed to use AI images. I know a lot of people are starting to use AI imagery with their books. I don't know how that works, but if that is the case, then there you go with some of your imagery, if you can't draw. But let's, what I tell a lot of people to do is if they want to put their family history in perpetuity, you could do that in a book. If you have, grandma's, marinara sauce recipe or great grandma's matzo ball soup recipe, do a recipe book. Why not? Does a book have to be 100 pages? Does a book have to be 200 pages? Do you have to have volumes of an encyclopedia? No. You could publish anything you want as long as it's clean, not dirty, Now, it might not sell, but if you want to publish a cookbook, see, what's really interesting about that is when I cook, I have some really good dishes. I can't write down what it is because I do a pinch of this and a pinch of that, and I pour some of this, and then I do it to taste. And I've never written a cookbook. But for those of you that go, I have some really damn good recipes. I could write them down and publish them. Do it. Why not? You could do anything you like. Let's say you've had issues, and I would be very careful, naming actual companies and things like that. You don't want to get libel or whatever, but let's say you've gotten screwed over. And it's a type of company that seems to continue to screw you over. You could write about that. How not to get screwed over when you do an oil change. Or when you go to the doctor, or how you feel about medicine, or how you feel about politics. So when I say write a book, I mean there's no the opportunities are endless. Relationships with your kids. How to be a good mother-in-law, how to be a bad mother-in-law, which is something I'm thinking about writing. Yeah. I don't care if you steal my idea, but I'm going to be doing a mother-in-law book. These are, you could write whatever you want. It doesn't have to be, but do it because something you want to do. And maybe something's going to hit. Maybe something's going to stick. I've had colleagues who say, no, if I'm going to write a book, it's going to take years. I'm going to make sure that it is going to be so full of facts and all that. And you could do that. But, if you procrastinate like I do, I've had some books where they're still half written. And then I had other books when my friend died. I poured my heart out and I wrote that book in 2 weeks. Write something you're passionate about. And also sometimes it helps you if you're looking to later sell books. You already being an author and an established author does help. It's not your first book. This is, other books. So keep in mind, people will rate your books. And so you want to make sure it doesn't suck if that's where you're going in terms of wanting to sell. But same thing with making videos. And I know you got to be careful with online and social media and all that. But, you want to give advice. You could do that now, whether it's, I don't really have a TikTok account because I'm still not that trusting of it, but I'm getting there. But you could do things, and if you feel like this is some advice I want to give that I want to put into a book, do it. But one thing that I think is a really shall we say promising that I think most people should do anyway is write a book for the family. Not so much something that you're going to be putting out there, but for the world to buy. But if there's advice you want to give your kids and great grandkids, I think that's very, very cool. Because the one thing I'm noticing with families is they keep asking, who was great-great-grandma? How come I could play the piano? Do we have anybody in the family who could play that? I don't know. Most of my family was murdered in the Holocaust. I don't know. And if I want to ask any family who knows of them, they're already gone. So change that. Write everything you know about grandma, grandpa, whatever. Whether it includes recipes, whether it includes funny jokes, whether it includes... And I got to tell you, for your kids and grandkids and great-grandkids, it's a pretty cool book. 1-877-Doc-Dolly. Dr. Dahlia here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Welcome back to the Dr. Dolly Show. 1-877-Doc-Dolly, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So we're starting to see more measles cases spring up. And according to, I believe this is the Colorado Department of Public Health, there was an unvaccinated adult who traveled from Europe to the United States while having infectious measles, spreading it to 17 other people. This is according to the CDC and the Journal of Infectious Disease. And I'm not sure if those 17 other people were vaccinated or not. But in May 2025, the CDC was notified of an adult who flew commercially from Europe to Denver International Airport in Colorado, stayed overnight in a hotel, then boarded another flight to North Dakota. He had fever, cough, cold-like symptoms, conjunctivitis, or pink eye during travel. And then the rash occurred one day after his flight. So cough, runny nose, red eyes. I know a lot of people call up telemedicine to get antibacterial antibiotic eye drops, but red eyes, pink eye could be viral, and we want to, evaluate what virus it is. And so the contact investigation looked at 135 domestic travelers exposed to the patient. 15 of them, 13 adults and 2 children, were infected during the international flight and domestic flights at the airport, and then at the airport. So 5 got sick or got exposed and then sick from the international flight, 3 on the domestic flight to North Dakota, and then 7 at the airport. They say the virus then spread to 2 other people outside their households for a total of 17 infections. Now, according to CIDRAP-UMN-EDU, which is where we're getting this from, they say 10 of the 15 secondary case patients had documented or self-reported receipt of at least 1 dose of a measles vaccine. 5 were unvaccinated. 5 case patients, 3 unvaccinated, 2 were self-reported vaccination, were hospitalized. Now that's important data to know. So the majority of the cases who got measles from this international traveler was vaccinated to some degree, whether it was fully vaccinated or at least one of the shots. They say of the 2 tertiary case patients, one was, so secondary case, you're the primary if you're sick. Secondary is somebody who gets it from you. Tertiary is somebody who gets it from the guy that was exposed to you. So one of the 2 tertiary case patients, one was confirmed to have received 2 vaccine doses and was exposed to a second case patient who self-reported vaccination, while the other was unvaccinated and exposed to an unvaccinated secondary case patient. So the study authors recommend of this study that vaccination is recommended prior to international travel for all travelers aged 6 months or older. Travelers with fever, overt signs of transmissible illness, such as coughing or malaise, are strongly encouraged to delay travel while symptomatic. But you see, we're seeing all these news stories of outbreaks of measles and, maybe let's not shame parents. Look at the New York Times. Parents tried to shield their children from vaccines, and instead they got measles. And the measles is spreading in South Carolina. There's multiple places where measles are spreading. And yes, the unvaccinated population is playing a role. But this, the thing I keep asking is who is vaccinated and who's not, who's getting sick. Okay, the majority of the population is vaccinated with measles, for measles. And if you're telling me that 10 of the 15, 66% of the individuals in this one study were vaccinated to either some degree or fully to measles, then, you could yell and scream at parents, but we need to kind of stop and take a look and go, do we need a booster? Do we need to relook at how efficacious and effective is the MMR vaccine that many of us got as kids or we're currently giving to kids? People are saying, oh my gosh, well, RFK Jr., he's trying to, get rid of vaccines, the CDC, the Trump administration's anti-vaccines. No. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya is urging measles vaccination to protect people. The CDC's new acting director, Jay Bhattacharya, has urged Americans to get vaccinated against measles. Nobody's anti-vaccine here. They want to look at the safety. They want to look at the efficacy, which is absolutely in their purview, and they should. If they didn't, they'd be negligent. But he says measles is preventable, and vaccination remains the most effective way to protect yourself and those around you. We have the situation is actually a lot more simpler than people make it out to be. You have vaccinated individuals who are very happy with their vaccine. You've had some people who sustained a side effect or a complication from the vaccine. Every single medicine on this planet can have side effects. And when a parent who loves their child is concerned about the side effect versus the vaccine, many of them, it's not because they're crazy. It's because they are trying to make the best decision for their child. Having vaccinated my children, I completely understand what parents are going through. When you are bringing in a very, what you believe is a healthy baby, and there they are kicking and happy and all that, they get 6 shots in their leg, and then later that night, that child is barely moving. I mean, it was scary for us. We still vaccinated our kids, but oh my gosh, I was praying and praying and praying. And it was, it's scary to think that you're going to inject something into your child while your child's healthy, and there's that very tiny risk that there could be a side effect. However, what prompted me to do it, I was scared to death of polio. I was scared to death of tetanus, having a family member who died of tetanus. I didn't want my kids getting hepatitis. I didn't want my kids getting, certain things. They actually both got chicken pox, but a milder form. So they got vaccinated and the medication and that. So I think they're doubly protected. But, vaccines, we know, save lives. But we also know that there can be side effects. So any parent concerned about that should not be mistreated, should not be, called, every name in the book and accused of being MAGA. And although for some it's a compliment. But, we need to understand what is it that they're concerned about. And the funny thing is, the majority of parents who came to me, they said, look, Dahlia, I'm not anti-vaccine. I just don't want 6 shots injected into my 8-week-old. Can I spread them out? So I referred them to the health department for a delayed schedule or whatever the health department could do with the parent. And at the time, the health department was pretty flexible with parents because the parents wanted to get their kids vaccinated, but they wanted to figure out what their child could react to, and they wanted to do one at a time. And they were, and so the health department worked with them. I don't know if the health department still does that, but a lot of the parents are like, look, this is what I'm pro-vaccine. It's just we're doing a lot. And I need to know that, my child's not going to have a side effect. Why? Because that's their job as a parent. So South Carolina now has a measles outbreak. I think as of Friday, they had 985 cases. 1,136 cases of measles have been reported in the United States. Measles can have complications, and we don't want people getting measles. Measles can, cause hospitalization. We have patients in the hospital right now being treated for measles. So, yes, I do believe that it's worth vaccinating for. However, what I really think we need to be doing is being very, 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 very transparent about when we are hearing of these cases of measles. Don't let the media go, yeah, these unvaccinated loonies are doing that. I mean, really, it sounds like some of the people that are hospitalized did get the vaccine. Remember I told you there were patients who were getting yelled at during COVID who had COVID. They were in the hospital, and some of the nurses, not everybody, nurses are really cool, but I had patients tell me that the nurse was yelling at them going, you see, this is why you need to wear a mask. And he's like, but I did wear the mask. I did. It's like, what are you talking about? You're accusing me of not wearing a mask. I did wear the mask. Why do I have COVID? Well, because the mask wasn't protecting you. You needed a better mask, or we needed something better than that. The mask mandate wasn't that effective. But quit the yelling, quit the rhetoric, quit the politics. Let's look at what's going on and see if we need a better vaccine or a booster. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit, and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99799, and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99799. Again, FREE to 99799.
As an organ donor, your story doesn't have to end. The good in you can live on. In fact, you could save up to 8 lives and restore sight and health for many more. Sign up right now online as an organ, eye, and tissue donor. You'll be happy you did, and just maybe someone else will be happy too. Go to organdonor.gov. It saves lives. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So the drama never stops. The ICE has pulled out for a good part of Minneapolis. And even though the operations to remove criminal, illegal migrants and those in the country illegally still will continue as it always has, because that's the U.S. immigration policy. It's the Canadian immigration policy, the Mexican immigration policy. You will be removed if you are here illegally and you didn't follow the pathway while you have the legal, the legal pathway and people in line and going through that process. You take cuts in line, Just like you take cuts out of DMV, you're going to be put in the back of the line. That's what happens. But Kristi Noem, Homeland Security Secretary, is now undergoing a Senate hearing about her handling of Trump's administration's immigration agenda and how they are responding to the mess that Biden left this country. Most GOP senators expressed support to Kristi Noem, but there were two who were critical, according to CBS News: John Kennedy of Louisiana and Thom Tillis of North Carolina. And there, obviously much of the concern is centering around the deaths of Alex Preddy and Renee Good, who were shot and killed by federal agents when as we've seen the videos, many of us are really, really puzzled why there were interaction with protesters and ICE agents. The protesters, as far as I'm concerned, should have been in a safe area. There should have been a perimeter. And instead, you had, Renee Good in her van fleeing the ICE agent, but then gunning it and then almost hitting, another officer. And then she ends up dying in that. And then Alex Preddy bringing a weapon, getting into a scuffle. Some say he was disarmed prior. Some say he wasn't. Did he grab another? Not sure what happened, but an ICU nurse ends up dead in a scuffle with ICE agents. And I've been asked, how would you do Kristi Noem's job differently? She did express regret for the deaths, etc. What I would have done is I would have really ensured that, and this is why I think Minneapolis, and I've said this before, why the mayor needs to be sued and Minneapolis needs to take, responsibility for this, is you need to set up perimeters. If there are police who are engaged in an operation, if there are firefighters engaged in an operation, if there are medical personnel engaged in an operation. I mean, if I'm dealing with a medical issue, I need people away. I need to work. Don't be throwing stuff at me. Don't be whistling in my ear. I'm there as a medical professional trying to work. There's supposed to be perimeters. If I'm in the hospital, if I'm in the ER, there's doors, there's separation. So with ICE agents being there, or FBI agents, or police officers, whomever, there has to be perimeters. There has to be areas where the protesters are not interacting with armed officers or first responders. That's how I would have handled it. And if Minneapolis wasn't going to provide the protection, then I would have brought in extra individuals to provide that barrier and protection. Now, I understand if they're trying to do covert operations but apparently these protesters were going after the rental car companies and the motels and listen, I'm all about peaceful protest and First Amendment rights and assembly. And if you want to have a march, if you want to have that's a privilege that we Americans have and embody, and it's a beautiful thing. But if you're throwing things and harassing them and getting into scuffles it's dangerous. You do not get into you do not engage an armed officer. If they say stay back, you stay back. If they say move that vehicle, you can't have your vehicle here. So what I'm looking at this is, where was the perimeter? And is it on ICE or it's on the city? The city was supposed to do that, and they didn't. So then, should Kristi Noem have ensured there were perimeters? I mean, it's frightening to see what happened, but we all saw it happen. You had people in the face of these individuals, and bad things happen. I told you, my grandfather was an officer, and he said, look, if an officer ever tells you to freeze, I don't care if you're innocent, I don't care whatever, you freeze. Don't scratch your ass. Don't reach for a lollipop. You just freeze. Because even him, understanding, years ago, decades ago, that if an officer has a weapon, they might use it if they feel they are at risk or threatened. So be as unthreatening and follow what they say, hands up. When I get pulled over with when I speed, and I don't want to say if I speed, it happens. When I speed, immediately my hands are on 10 to 2. They could see my hands. They know that my intent is to make sure they don't feel threatened, so bad things don't happen. I mean, when you see the chaos that happened, it's just frightening. Now, I guess a Minnesota prosecutor is investigating the, quote, potentially unlawful behavior of federal agents during the ICE activity in Minneapolis. Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty, whose jurisdiction includes Minneapolis, said at a press conference that her office has created a portal that would allow the public to send in videos and other evidence of incidents they witnessed, in which they think Gregory Bovino, who was at one point the commander-at-large of U.S. Border Patrol, and of other federal agents committed a crime. They said, we will investigate and pursue, charging where appropriate, and will seek collaboration with the local law enforcement wherever and whenever needed. Make no mistake, we are not afraid of any legal fight. Now, listen, nobody wants government. Nobody wants to feel like they are being harassed by the government. Nobody wants to feel like, military is coming in and impeding people's rights. But the one thing that has been always a part of America is a legal immigration process. And if you violated that and then there's consequences. We've always had law enforcement. We've always had, there being consequences for coming into the country illegally. You get deported. We didn't make up the word deported in 2026. That has been a word that's been used for decades, centuries. I mean, this is, and so Tom Homan comes, negotiates, ends up taking over the operation, brings, draws back officers. And then my guess is they're, rather than doing these surge operations, they're going to be much more discreet. But, it's a shame because I think a lot of the protesters think they won and that they need to double down on that sort of activity. And people got hurt. And I just don't understand why the city officials didn't make sure there was barriers and perimeters where you could do your peaceful protesting and not get engaged with armed officers. If an armed officer thinks you're going to run him down with your car or minivan, if an armed officer thinks you're going to take his weapon, they're going to defend themselves. So ensure that the protesters are away from these individuals. Peaceful assembly does not mean you get into a paramedic's face or you get into a cop's face or you get into that's not what peaceful assembly is. And right to free speech, that's dangerous. A firefighter wants to put out a fire and you don't want that fire because you think you want that fire to persist because you started it and you have no. You get the hell away. That firefighter is going to want to put out that fire. And it is up to Minneapolis and their law enforcement and their public officials and city officials to ensure that protesters are in a safe area. So we'll see what happens. I know a lot of Democrats want to defund ICE, and we have a very scary situation now with individuals who, as we saw in Austin, who were pro-Ayatollah and who felt that they needed to kill college kids who had nothing to do with Iran, geopolitics, foreign policy, nothing to do with that. Feeling for Allah, they had to kill college students. All right. We have people who have infiltrated this country. And with open borders, there were wolves in sheep's clothing. We have to find those individuals who want to hurt Americans and get them out. Common sense, people. 1-877-DOC-LA.
Can you believe, with all the recent violent protests, looting, and destruction, some areas are considering either defunding or abolishing the police? At a time when America's neighborhoods need the protection of police the most, some elected officials would rather create more chaos by playing politics. If you're sick of elected officials caving in to demands of the radical left, you're not alone. It's time we stand up and declare our support for local police. The majority of police officers are important partners in protecting our God-given rights. If you prefer freedom over chaos, then learn how you can help protect the local police that serve your community. Call today and request your free Support Your Local Police info packet. Dial 800-JBS-USA-1. That's 800-JBS-USA-1. Request your free Support Your Local Police info packet by calling 800-JBS-USA-1 today.